Welcome to the Business and Interiors podcast, the place where the world of interior design meets the essence of business success. I'm your host, David Del Greco, alongside my co-host, Cinzia Moretti of the award-winning Moretti Interior Design Studio. Our mission is to help interior designers run, streamline, and grow their business with confidence. In this podcast, we dive into the professional journeys and personal stories of some of the most inspiring interior designers and creative entrepreneurs. Each episode offers a glimpse into the strategies and experiences that have helped shape their business in this ever-evolving industry. So tune in, get inspired, and join us as we uncover the stories behind the design. Today on the podcast, we have Rob Burton, the co-founder of Dapa Atelier, an award-winning interior design studio specializing in commercial interiors, show homes, and private residencies. Rob and his team work closely with property developers and private clients to create tailored, high-end interiors that balance style and functionality. Rob, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, Rob.
Hi.
You know, your work caught my eye on social media, on Instagram, and I thought, why not having you, invite you here on this podcast?
I'm honoured. Thank you very much.
That's great. I mean, again, what I always start with the beginnings, right?
Yeah.
So, what inspired you to start Dapa Atelier?
So I was quite new to interior design. I graduated from university with a business degree in 2006. Had no idea what I wanted to do with my life.
Mm-hmm.
And a job opportunity came up from an interior design company, and it suddenly dawned on me that I'd actually been quite interested in it and didn't really realise. So I worked in business development for that company. And then 2009, as a lot of companies went through the giant recession, the company went into administration. So I thought, well, this is my time really. I'd always had entrepreneurial spirit and entrepreneurial things throughout my life. So I thought now's the time to go for it. So we started the company in 2009, and that was really the kickstart that it needed.
Wow.
And I'm quite curious about the story behind your name, Dapa Atelier.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so when we were trying to come up with names, it was four of us that started originally, and it was four guys. And interior design is quite a female-dominated industry in the main. So we wanted a name that represented something curated, like a tailor, like a suit tailor. So Dapa kind of really suited us. But rather than spell it the normal way, we thought, because we're doing design and procurement, it was design and procurement agency. So kind of the two things kind of married up really well.
Wow,
Amazing.
interesting. I like the story of the four guys.
Yeah.
I really love that.
Yeah,
So
it's two of us now.
okay.
But it was four of us that started, which was 15 years ago this summer. So it's quite a while ago.
Oh, wow.
Amazing.
Yes.
And did you have a business plan straight away when you started? Did you know that you wanted to work with, property developers, or you already knew what kind of project you wanted to focus on, or did that evolve during the years?
I'll be honest, in 15 years, I've never written a business plan.
Okay.
The way we started was, the industry was still very difficult in 2009. So we really just took anything we could do. We were doing some very low-end furniture packages, some basic show homes. It took us a few years in the industry to improve, to really kind of find our feet. It's only been over the last 5 years, or maybe a bit longer, where we've really kind of moved into the higher end of the market where we've always wanted to be. But to start with, it was just a case of let's get out there, let's sell some furniture, and let's see how it goes.
And was there a moment, when you started that you felt, yes, this is what I meant to do? Did you have that?
I kind of felt that before we started the company. I felt like
Okay.
I'd found an industry that I had a genuine passion about. I had friends in industries that they were a bit bored by. I love design, and I felt, although I'd never given it a minute thought before I got a job there, actually, I felt like I'd found my place. And I've always been entrepreneurial, as I said earlier, and so running my own interior design company just felt like the absolute perfect fit for me, and I haven't really looked back since.
So if you started from the very beginning, you were four guys starting this journey together.
Yeah.
When was the first project coming along? What did you do? How did you find the first project?
It was actually up in Cheshire, and it was doing for rental apartments. It was we would go and source the furniture. We'd go and pick it up. I would hire the van. I'd drive quite a large van, which the guys now at the office find hilarious that I used to do all of that. So I would go and drive the van, drive it up there, fit it out, and we're talking kind of £3,000 a pop, and we did that for a few months. Just to we didn't borrow any money. We were very self-funded, and we just built it up to the point where we thought we were ready to kind of take the next step.
And what was the next step?
It was show homes, really. That was the first thing, which
Okay.
was the slightly larger project. So our first ever showroom was in Birmingham, actually, where we're based. And that was, again, a fairly low budget one, but that really kind of got us off the mark. But really, it was our job to then build some projects where we could get more noticed. And 2011 was probably our first big break in London. Because getting into London when you're not from London, we found incredibly difficult.
Where were you based then?
So we're based in the Midlands. Our office is in the Midlands, so it's just outside Birmingham. But in 2011, when we came to the market, if you weren't in London, people would put the phone down. You know, quite literally put the phone down and say, well, if you're not in London, you don't exist. And we found that really difficult, and it took us a while to get in.
Oh, that's interesting.
But now 80% of our work is in London, so the irony.
And did you start working with property developers from the get-go?
Yes, pretty much. Some people would build and retain the homes for rental, but yes, property developers were our main market and still remain.
And how did you started working with them? How did you go and knock on people's doors, or how did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have Instagram back then. So yeah, it was old school. It was building a database of people, going online. LinkedIn wasn't around either. So it was old school websites.
No social media.
Yeah.
You're so privileged now. Right?
It's so easy. You can just go on LinkedIn, who's the sales director? There you go. Yeah, it was literally building a database of people, of opportunities, and literally picking up the phone, you know, and you make 100 calls and get one yes, you know, but it's that resilience to keep going just for that one yes.
Do you continue to do that now, even though we have all these luxuries, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, it's still an element to my role and our sales director's role, which is the base, you know, picking up the phone and calling people. But with Instagram and with things like this and social media, we're finding there's a lot more people coming to us. We have a lot more word of mouth now as well. So there's still an element of it, but nowhere near as much as it was in the early days.
So what is actually the process of working with a developer that, as we know, is quite different from a private client?
Yeah, it can vary. It depends on the nature of the project, the time scale, but the usual rule of thumb would be contacted by the client. They would either email us a digital brief, or we would have a conversation with them. They would talk us through the nature of the project, where it is, what it is, when it is, how much. If it's a tender, sometimes we pitch against other interior designers, sometimes it's not. We obviously prefer not. We would then go away, put together the design, and we would pitch it to the client and hope they like it.
Do they normally give you carte blanche, you know, or do they get involved, you know, the developers in that process, in the design process?
Again, it varies. Some clients will have a company look that they like to stick to that they know works. Some companies will say, this is a blank, worksheet, go, create whatever you want. We just have to then be cautious that we want to take risks. We're not so many that we alienate, especially in a tougher market like we are at the moment, that it pushes people away. That fundamentally, a show home is a sales tool, first and foremost. So if it doesn't sell the property, it's not doing its job. So yes, we can take risks, but we also have to know where the lines are.
I want to go a little bit deeper on that.
Okay.
When you design show home, what are the main things you had to take in consideration? I know you have to consider the brand of the developer, but in terms of selling the flat to the market, what are the main considerations?
It's a phrase I always use, that I think a great show home is where science and art come together. Everyone sees the show home as an interior which is artistic, it's beautiful, it's tactile, and it has to be all of those things. But fundamentally, it has to work.
Yeah.
So, for example, if it's a 2-bedroom flat, it has to have seating for 4. It has to have dining for 4. You have to have 2 good-sized bedrooms. Our job is to make sure that the scientific parts of it work. Because if someone walks in and says there's no storage, or where am I supposed to have a dinner party, or where do I sit to watch TV, it doesn't work. Exactly. So you can be as arty as you like, but it's not going to do its job. So you have to kind of combine the two.
Yeah. And how much are you involved in the design process?
Really involved. Probably too involved, if you ask me. I take it very personally, and my job is to deliver the client's vision and to do it, and I hold myself very accountable for that. So yes, so the designer will put together initial concepts. I'll go through it with them. We'll go into the library, pull out wallpapers, fabrics, and then my job is to be the client's eyes and say, look, I think we should tweak that. And so when I present it, I know that the client's going to be happy with it.
I like it.
One of the consideration is, is trying to, or probably the most important part is trying to design something that it appeals, to a wide market, right? But at the same time, you want to inject some personality, some, unique touches to it. How do you do that? And is the developer okay with it?
It's hard. I mean, sometimes we'll get a brief that says we're appealing to first-time buyers, families, and downsizers, which you imagine that's the entire market.
Yeah.
So you need to try and create something that it has mass appeal but isn't vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
So it's finding the right balance and taking risks in small places. So it might be that the main interior is quite neutral and quite calm, but you put quite slightly risky piece of artwork on the wall. That it's one piece that if someone doesn't like it, they're not going to ruin their experience, as opposed to doing a bright pink sofa, which might alienate half the people that walk through the door. So it's trying to kind of be mass appeal.
Yeah, because I've noticed that your projects do have that personality. They are not the type of projects that are too safe, let's say. And so that's, it's great to see that, were able to inject, obviously, that, the personality and maybe your philosophy into design. And how did you go about creating your, let's say, your design style or design philosophy?
We've always tried really hard not to have an in-house style.
Yeah.
I know a number of design companies have an in-house. We've tried desperately not to do that, but over time, that's kind of happened naturally. But we really always want to evolve and pivot and always look to improve on that. So we have some fundamentals to our philosophy, which is continuous improvement, the Kaizen, Japanese Kaizen method, and always saying to the guys, we can do that a little bit better next time. And I always want to look back a couple of months after a show home and say, it looks great, but next time I do this, and never really truly 100% happy with it because we always want it to be better. And quality, we're very hard on our supply chain. We have very high standards. It's making sure that what we give our clients is acceptable and it goes above and beyond what they expect to have.
Do sometimes developer ask you for the impossible and say, this is the short time you have to put together a design?
I wouldn't say sometimes. I'd say it's most
most of the time, right?
I think, but we see ourselves as an extension of their team. We're in it with them. Their success is our success, and their failure is our failure. And at the moment when the market is challenging, and sometimes it might be year end for one of our clients, and they're saying, "Look, we need to get something in 4 weeks. I don't know how you're going to do it, but we need that." And our job is to react to that. And so we've set up our supply chain intentionally. We're very good to them. We pay them on time, all the time, and we make sure that they're on our side as well. So when I go to them and say, I need a bespoke sofa, bespoke joinery in 4 weeks, when most people would laugh at you, they're able to do it because that's what the market needs.
And what happens to the furniture? So does furniture go to the show home? If someone going to buy the show home, the furniture will stay in the flat. But if someone to buy the show home and say, I'm going to change everything, for instance, because maybe they want to inject their own style, what happens to the furniture? Are you going to reuse it for another project?
So it would depend. So I would say the majority of the time, especially in London, when it's an international buyer in the main, they would tend to buy it lock, stock and barrel because it's easy for them. If not, the developer might say, can you move it to another apartment? And we might put a slightly different colour palette in, and they can just get the most out of their investment of money. Or sometimes if it's been there a number of years, they'll have a staff sale. But we actually work with a couple of homeless charities that actually will come and pick it up. So we'll say to the client, look, if you're happy to. And so we've got photos back of beautiful bespoke corner sofas in these places, and it's amazing to see because that's
quite
never
nice,
lost.
Yeah.
And from a sustainability perspective, nothing goes in the bin. It's always reused in some way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. And what would you say are the biggest changes that you see in the market or in the sector in terms of interior design needs?
I think speed, which you alluded to earlier, I think we've definitely seen an increase in urgency for interiors, as I said, because it's a sales tool. It's that need to get, and at the moment we have a lot of clients with stock. So they'll have some clients up to 100 apartments which are built and finished, but not sold. So there's that real urgency to get them dressed. So we're having to do bespoke design to the same level as we always have, whereas we may have had 10 or 12 weeks. We're now doing kind of 4 to 8 weeks and anything in between. And we're also seeing sustainability is really key now with our clients, us being able to trace our sources to make sure that the supply chain is correct. There's the correct conditions, the correct materials, and that is really prevalent at the moment.
It's actually quite nice to see that actually sustainability is becoming quite important for developers. They usually are not the most favorite people to say, using very good quality furniture. So it's quite interesting to see that actually someone like you actually is pushing towards that, because we have the power to change the what happens in the world. So it's quite nice to see that there is a change in that sense.
I think there's a hunger for it now, and whereas a few years ago it may have been more marketing focused, that people doing it, greenwashing, whereas now so many developers, construction itself is very difficult to be sustainable because you're using concrete and using materials, which you have to. But we're seeing a lot of developers pushing towards their carbon reductions. And if they're going to all of the effort that they are, why wouldn't we go to the same effort when it comes to the show home? So we work with a number of brands that we recommend, from anything from paint to upholsteries, making sure everything's traceable and it's as it should be.
Yeah, I find this quite inspiring as well, because things are changing and it's nice that we are doing something.
Yeah,
it's quite nice.
I think B Corp, the introduction of B Corp has been a big one. There's a number of B Corp developers now, and we're on our own journey towards that. It's very difficult to get, but that makes it worthwhile doing,
Yeah.
So I think it's making sure that things can still be made overseas, but it's making sure that the packaging they come in and the footprint they leave is minimised as possible.
Great. And I'm curious about the pricing model, because in this industry, pricing is such a huge topic, because everyone tends to have different models, different strategies of pricing their projects and to make sure that they are profitable. And how do you price your project for show homes or commercial projects?
We have two different models.
Yeah.
What we'd refer to as open book, where we would charge a larger design fee, a percentage of the overall job, and we charge a minimal markup on the furniture, just a handling fee. Or what we have called closed book, where a client will say, here's our budget. We will then source everything. We charge a very minimal design fee and we charge a larger markup. It tends to work out about the same, but some clients, for their kind of auditing purposes, need to see a breakdown of every item and where it's from, what it costs. So, we would release that information.
Okay.
We're very open with it. I believe in transparency and clarity with that we are a business, not a charity. We are there to make profit. Profit is not a dirty word, but also that we're delivering value and being fair.
Do you think building the brand has helped you to increasing obviously your fees and justify that, potentially that large design fee at the beginning?
Definitely. I think it's building that that need for somebody to come and use you. You're a named designer in the industry now, not somebody who's called them up. And that definitely helps, especially on the larger budget jobs when the fees can be quite substantial. It definitely helps having that backing behind you and that marketing behind you to prove why you're worth that investment, I guess.
Exactly. You work with different type of developers. So, of course, everyone will have their own brand, their own, personality. Do you find that among those developers, there are actually common features? There's something that all of them ask?
Yeah, I think it's a very tight industry, as is interior design. So you'll find that people will move around. So you'll find that cultures from different companies will kind of happen. So there are definitely some similarities, but then there's also some differences. And very much depends the bravery and the license people are given to explore. So we'll have some clients who say, look, we can do whatever we want, go for it. The MD backs us. And some clients will say, well, actually, no, if the MD turns up and doesn't like it, I'm in trouble. So yes, there are some differences, but there are also some big similarities as well.
Right. Yeah. And do you find that, as we said, the sustainability is a big change. Is there another change that you've seen, because you've been in the business for quite a few years now?
Yeah.
Any other changes you noted from when you started till now?
I think if I take London as a specific area, it's always had international investment, but the type has been different. So when we first started, there was a huge amount of Russian investment in London, which then kind of died out 10 years ago. And then the last few years, it's absolutely been dominated by Hong Kong and mainland China has been the investment into certain parts. But then we've seen that slow down recently. And now Istanbul seems to be a bit of a melting pot. We've had some clients who've sold multiple units in Istanbul, which you just wouldn't think of. And the US seems to be a target market at the moment. So a big change I've seen is the type. And you can imagine the different cultural differences and aspirations and needs between somebody from the Middle East and somebody from Hong Kong is very different. So it's our job to be set up, ready to really appeal to that market and that culture.
Yes, that's quite interesting, actually, how that shift. Very interesting.
I wanted to talk about your team, because I've noticed that you managed to build quite a large team behind you. And did you start? Obviously, you were already four to begin with.
Yeah.
At what point did you start hiring new people? for the business?
It's probably a couple of years in, and I'll be honest, it was terrifying. I didn't know anything about employment law. I didn't know how to write a contract. I didn't know even who to go, to go to for it, and it was really scary. But once we'd kind of got our first couple of people on board, and we kind of got used to the process, and for me, bringing talented people onto the team is the most rewarding part of having a business, bar none. I love to see somebody who comes on. We have a designer at the moment who's come on a couple of years ago, and where she is now to where she started is just completely different. And to see that growth is just so inspiring. So I love that. And at the moment, I think with interior design, there's a sweet spot with numbers. We were a team of almost 30 a couple of years ago, and now we're a team of about 18. That's unfortunate to react to the market. But actually, we feel like that's the right amount of people. It's not a numbers game where you have to constantly bring new projects in to keep the lights on. We can pick and choose to an extent who we work with and what projects we work on. Yeah. And we have really the best people. I think we're probably at the moment the best team we've ever had.
Fantastic. So if you have 18 people, how those people are divided? Do you have divided for each project? How is the internal?
Yeah. So it starts with so myself and Louise, who's our sales director. We're kind of the outward-facing sales team. We have Becky, who supports us back at the office. We have 6 designers, so it's quite heavily focused on the design team. And one designer will take the project from start to finish. They're involved in every single element. And then it gets handed over for operations team, which is a team of 3. They'll procure all the items, bring them into the warehouse. And then we have our styling and fitting team, which go out and basically deliver it. So it goes through several sets of hands. But because we're a smaller team now, it's much more intimate. Everyone knows every project. Whereas when we were a bit larger, sometimes it got a little bit disjointed. And so we felt it's definitely the right number now.
Yeah.
And what were the people that you employed at the very beginning? What kind of external help did you need at that stage?
It was procurement. So Daniel, my business partner, he looked after the creative. I looked after the sales. So really, it was that kind of operational side that we needed to come in and actually procure the items. Then it's financial. Nobody likes doing finances.
No accountants,
Who does? It's an incredibly important part of running a business, but it's also probably the most boring part. Sorry to all the accountants out there. So yeah, bringing in that external financial help to make sure that we were tracking profit margins, we were tracking spend, because you don't want to get to year end and think, oh, we've had a great time, but we've made no money.
Of course.
And among all the projects you did quite a few. Which one is the one that you're most proud of?
Oh, that's a difficult question.
It's like saying which one of your babies you prefer.
It's a really difficult question because at different stages of life, probably the most recognisable project we worked on was Battersea Power Station. Everybody knows Battersea Power Station. It's an icon of London. So being heavily involved in that project is really stands the test of time. But then sometimes it was the first London project we ever did. It really has a place in my heart because that kind of got us into London. We're working on a hotel at the moment. I'm sure if and when we get that will be a really special moment. So I think over a 15-year period, it does change. But if I had to pick one, I'd say Battersea is probably the one that stands out the most.
You've done a project at the Battersea Power Station.
Yeah, we're still doing it, actually.
Oh, yeah. It's an amazing building, beautiful project.
Yes, it is. And now, which one was the least favorite?
Oh,
this is a naughty question.
I don't know, because I feel like I've enjoyed even the ones that have been difficult, because I feel when they're difficult, they push you. Yeah. And actually, although sometimes they might not be very enjoyable at the time, you're better for it. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Yeah. So it's very difficult to pinpoint one that I didn't enjoy. I think when you're up at listed buildings are very difficult to work on because of the access and the restrictions with English heritage. So any listed building, although they look beautiful, are very challenging to work on.
I like your positivity. No, because sometimes, interior design, when there's a project that doesn't go as it should be, they feel down and they say, oh, why it happens to me? But actually, you're right. You learn from that. So you should see that in a positive way and say, it let me understand what was wrong or what I did right for the next project. So I like your attitude.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's external factors as well that are out of your control. And I always think if you can't control it, and we've had projects where one team have signed it off and then another team have come in a year down the line and taken it over, and that can be quite challenging. But yeah, it's no such thing as mistakes. It's just learnings. That's my view on it.
Good one.
So what would you say was the, let's say, hardest lesson that you learned since you started?
That's a really good question. I think it's about assumption. There's a lot of terms out there, but assumption will really get you in trouble. And so I think that the biggest lesson I've learned is never assume anything. And so sometimes we ask so many questions from the offset, and we even have clients say, why are you asking me so many questions? And my answer will be, because the more I know at the start, the better I'm going to be at the end. And so it's never assume that someone's doing something you think they're doing. Double check, triple check. every trade we use, are you on site? Do you know what you're doing? Do you have what you need? And never assume, because I have assumed in the past and it's got me in trouble.
And if someone said to you, can you do a private residential, would you say yes or no?
We do some private residential. It's a very different thing to doing a show home. It's much more emotional investment. It's somebody's home. Often it'll be somebody international, so you're dealing with time zones and cultural differences and translation issues sometimes. So yeah, we pick and choose, but we do the occasional private client. But yeah, we've done some really lovely ones, and some people we've even had to come in and cry. No, and it sounds, but actually for us, they're so overjoyed by what we've done. They're in tears. Does it get better than that, really?
Yeah, because it's quite different, right? Because when you work with a property developer, it's all about numbers. It's all about, okay, yes, I can sell this, well done. Everything is very logical. And when obviously you work with a private client, then emotion starts to come out much more, right?
There are some emotions with developers.
Okay.
Although it is a sales tool, it's also a brand building exercise.
Right.
So this show home can enhance their brand or, damage their brand if it's not correct. So there is some emotional investment for sure, but not as much, I would say. So yeah, it's about understanding the client. And I think there's a lot more changes with a private client. You can go in, and sometimes it's years in advance, and you can be on like 25 iterations of the original design.
Right.
And sometimes people can't leave it alone.
That's true.
If you have to choose now, I know you have the repeated clients from developers, but if you have to choose one, without saying a name, one of your favorite clients, and he will ask you to do some projects abroad, overseas, would you say yes?
100%. We've done stuff, say overseas, it technically is overseas, Jersey. So we did that, and that was fun. That was great fun, because you had to put everything onto the boat and check it on. And a lot of our suppliers will ship internationally as well. So we have transport companies, we have the team to do it. And it's very much part of our growth plans is to look at things overseas. I've got friends in Dubai, in interior design world as well. So it's very much part of our plan to go overseas. But it would make more sense to do it with a client who we already have a relationship with than a brand new client.
Yeah.
Is the process of designing a show home quite similar to working with a residential client?
Yeah, in some ways you would approach it in the same way. You would still have the time, budget, look and feel, conversations. The timeline, I'd say, is longer with a private client. You might show initial concepts to start with, and you'd build it with them. It's a lot more collaborative. Whereas with a developer, very much when we turn up to show them, it's pretty much ready to go. And it is sometimes a yes or no. So
in terms of the design process for the show home, so you do the initial brief that's to understand the project, and then you go straight to the final design, or do you have a concept in between?
Depends. If it's a client that we're not pitching, which we have a number of those, sometimes we might say, if it's a slightly different project or a different area to they normally build, we might say, look, this is what we're thinking. Are you okay with this? And get their buy-in. Sometimes if it's a pitch, clients aren't willing to give any feedback until, just to be fair to everybody else in the process. So sometimes you are going in there. But I would have done my diligence. I'll know the area. I'll have visited the site. I'll have been to inside the plot. I'll be 90% there by the time I arrive.
So for designers that, for instance, they want to start into the design for show homes and developers, in terms of the design process, because, if you work for a residential private client, you have quite few steps, as you say, it takes a little bit longer. So you will suggest that the brief goes straight with the ideas or the complete design rather than go through every single stage. Probably a developer wouldn't have the time to say yes or no all the time, so they want to see a final product, correct?
Yeah, and as I said earlier, if you've got 3 people, which is quite common pitching for a project, it's not fair if one of them has already pre-pitched an idea and they found out that you like that. So sometimes clients, which is good, will be really fair and say, actually, we're not able to comment on that until you come in. But my advice would be ask lots of questions.
Yeah.
You get the brief, which is great, but sit down with the client, ask them. And when clients say, I want to be bold, how bold? Because there's bold and there's bold.
Exactly.
And sometimes we've pitched bold and it's gone wrong.
What bold means for you?
Well, exactly. It's a bit like if you're eating food and you say, I like spicy. Well, one
how
person's
spicy?
Exactly. So sometimes I'll say from 0 to 10, what are we talking? And just really gauge that. So to not waste your time or theirs.
Well, I'm curious to know as well, what do property developers look for when, before hiring an interior designer? is it the size of the team and capabilities, style? What is it that sometimes encourage people to hire a specific company?
I think it would depend on the type of development. For example, if it's a very high-end one in Kensington, that would be maybe a very different choosing procedure than if it was somewhere in East London. But I think there's some fundamentals that all clients want. And we did actually a lot of surveying and questioning of our clients to find out what's important. And although in interior design, it's all about the creative and all about the arts, actually fundamentally when it boiled down, clients want to know you're just going to show up. You're not going to make them look bad. You're going to do what you say you're going to do. You're going to come in on time, on budget. That is so important to clients. And some clients have said that's more important than what it looks like. It's just that you're going to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And what is next now for Dapa Atelier? What is the next goal, let's say?
We're a very ambitious company. We always want to evolve and pivot. And, as the market changes, it's getting ahead of that. But as I said, we are starting our journey in the hotel world, which is very exciting. Small boutique hotels, not kind of the big chain hotels, but small boutique, which is definitely the evolution of that. And we're doing a huge amount of more commercial now. So with clients, it's cinema rooms, concierges, spas. We installed a karaoke room a couple of weeks ago.
Nice.
Bowling alley. So really, for me, I would be bored, if I'm being honest, if I just did the same thing over and over again. I need variety. I need to be challenged in different ways, whether it's a studio apartment or a 10,000 square foot house in Wentworth. I need that challenge. So for us, it's just about that small diversifications.
Good. And how would you divide then the task to your team? Because if you do a variety of projects, how do you divide the team to the specific project? How do you choose the team?
We've intentionally built a broad team. So some team have hotel experience. Exactly. Some team, so one of our designers was the lead designer at Candy & Candy. So she's got a huge amount of experience at the higher end. So we've built that very broad base of skills. But what we try not to do is pigeonhole people and say, well, because you can do that, you only do that. If we've got a project that a designer hasn't worked on, we'll say, well, okay, well, can you work in partnership with that designer, learn about that industry? So at the moment, they're all learning about all the industries that we work in to be able to kind of, so it isn't really a battle.
That's actually quite nice.
They upskill them, really upskilling them.
And how do you stay inspired?
Personally or the company?
Both. In terms of whether it's design, but also motivated in this industry that you've been obviously working in for a very long time.
It's hard, and you do have bad days. If anybody says every day's a good day, they're a liar. Because it's not. You have bad days where I've sat there and thought, why am I doing this? What am I doing? But then it's when you get that one moment where you get amazing feedback, or you see one of your team do something, and you just get that amazing feeling that actually just makes you think, this is why I do it. It's really enjoying those good days and picking it out. And for me, being the underdog sometimes in a pitch and winning is an amazing feeling. So it's actually when you get those that really inspire me to push on.
And what was the big challenge, the big problem that you had to face and find a solution and say, oh my gosh, it was hard?
I'd say undoubtedly last year was my hardest year. I was really unwell at the end of 2022. My lung collapsed while I was in Vietnam. So I was really unwell. I was in intensive care in Vietnam, which you imagine is probably not the place you want to be when that happens. Oh. And I could feel from the office industry starting to decline. Interest rates were going that way. Inquiries were going down. They brought a new rule in December 22 about double staircases in buildings, which meant a lot of our projects got delayed. And while I was thousands of miles away in hospital, I could feel the company, thinking, oh God, what's going to happen? So I felt quite helpless at that point. And then Christmas came back in January 23, and really we had to make some tough decisions. And I think if you've been in business long enough, everybody goes through it. And that was really difficult. But I feel like we had the support of our team, suppliers and clients. And where we've got to from then until now has been exponential. So some tough days.
Yeah.
Well, congrats on
thank you
on the recovery and also for the team, for the business, because sometimes people get too down and they won't be able to raise again. So well done, congratulations on being that strong.
Thank you. It's a weird thing. I didn't feel like at the time, but I'm glad it happened, and I never thought I'd say that. But the lessons I've learned and the skills I've harnessed, and you really know who's close to you and who's with you. And as suppliers, team and clients. And I'm actually glad it happened because we've really learned so many things and we're stronger for it. So actually,
it does open your eyes. And
it does. And it shows you because, from day one, we were just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and doing more projects. And actually, it's the first time Now, let's say it's not getting knocked down, it's how you get back up once you've been knocked down, and you're stronger for it. So I think it empowers you to think, what if anything happens again? And in the housing industry, a puff of wind can come and suddenly everything changes. So, it shows me that we can react to it and we can deal with it.
Rob, thank you so much. That was very inspiring. Thank you.
Lovely to meet you.
Thank you very much, Rob. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in. And if you enjoyed our conversation, feel free to share it with your friends. And if you wish to dive deeper into the business of interior design, we invite you to join our membership community at businessandinteriors.com. Until next time.